Don't miss what comes next. Chuck Connors was born in the working-class areas of Brooklyn, New York. He became the perfect father in the Wild West on screen, but his real life was very different. Kevin Joseph Aloysius Connors was his real name. He was born in 1921 to an Irish family who had come to America during the worst of the Great Depression. His father worked as a building worker and his family had nothing but the Catholic faith that they held on to like a treasure through the hardest years. Chuck had always been taller than most kids his age, but that didn't help him in a place where poverty and crime were common. He remembered that because he was tall and looked very different from other people, he was picked on and told to either take the beatings or fight back. And Connors picked the second one. Football and baseball were his only ways to get away from the streets and think about a future he had never thought possible. Connors got a sports scholarship at Adelphi Academy High School. It was here that he started to shape himself into a man who wouldn't let his situation define him and was motivated to get out of poverty by himself. After that, he went to Seton Hall University and played basketball and was the team's starting starter for baseball. The name Chuck came from a simple habit that he did every day. He would tell his friends, "Chuck it to me, throw me the ball," every time he played. At the time, not even Connors himself thought that Chuck would become a TV star whose name would be linked to decades of shows, but things don't always go straight in life. Chuck Connors was slowly coming out of poverty. He went from being a kid having a hard time on the dirty playgrounds of Brooklyn to being a bright student athlete. He left the poor streets, but he never forgot them, or the fear, the fights, or the times he wanted to give up but didn't. Because of those memories of being a boy who was always preparing himself against the world, Lucas McCain became such a strong, determined, and resilient person. Chuck Connors' past not only defined him, it also followed him around like the sound of a Western gun in the last few years of his life. Before becoming the father of American acting in The Rifleman, Chuck Connors had a life that was just as interesting, but not in acting. Connors signed with the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1940, after he graduated from Seton Hall University. To play for one of the best baseball teams in America at the time was every boy's dream. But fate didn't plan for him to be famous there. He went from the Newport Dodgers to the Mobile Bears to the Montreal Royals over the course of 10 long years. Connors was only called up to the big leagues once, even though he had a great body and was a fierce competitor. In 1949, that happened. He hit a single for the Brooklyn Dodgers. There were no hits, runs, or records. Not a big deal, but it was a turning point. Instead of letting up, Connors tried professional basketball, which was a different field. As a player for the Boston Celtics, he became one of only 12 people in American history to have achieved this feat. It's almost like a story that he left this mark. With a dunk, he broke a backboard and became the first player in NBA history to do so. His life then took a sudden turn one afternoon in 1951 while he was playing baseball in California. Someone from the movie business saw Connors acting like a movie character in the bench and said, "That's the Laurence Olivier of the ballpark." A few weeks later, Connors got his first starring job in the 1952 movie Pat and Mike, which starred Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. Because of that one missed hit years ago, fate threw him right into the middle of Hollywood. From 1952 to 1957, Connors had a number of small parts in movies like South Sea Woman, The Big Country, and most famously, Old Yeller, 1957, Disney's beloved family movie in which he played a strict father. That show was what made the makers of Rifleman notice her. Their search wasn't for just any cowboy hero. They needed a dad who knew how to use a gun and cause pain. And Chuck Connors, who was 6 feet 5 inches tall, had a history of being in fights and had eyes that looked like they had seen a lot of the world. Failures in sports didn't happen by accident on Connors' way to becoming an actress, because the years he spent being turned down, demoted, and ignored shaped him into a different kind of man on screen. Not perfect, but strong. That was the moment when Hollywood stopped being a dream. This is where Chuck Connors would write the best part of his life story. In 1958, The Rifleman first aired. It was impossible for anyone, not even Chuck Connors, to have imagined that a simple Western show on ABC would become a national TV hit, making him a beloved figurehead of the American father. As Lucas McCain, a widower in 19th-century New Mexico, raising his young son Mark, Connors did more than just fight crime with a gun. He showed Mark how to be a man, love, and stand up for what's right. The Rifleman wasn't just another cowboy show. It had simple but powerful moments that moved people, and Connors was at the center of it all. He did most of his own stunts, like horseback rides and gunfights. He trained hard to be able to handle a customized Winchester rifle that became an icon for the character. It was planned out to the frame for every spin of the gun. Behind those scenes was a man who had tried to play professional sports but failed and was turned down in real life, and who now used every bit of that experience to breathe life into a character. It happened quickly and hard, so hard that even Hollywood was shocked. From 1958 to 1963, The Rifleman had 5 seasons with 168 shows. Each week, tens of millions of people watched. People came to think of Lucas McCain as a symbol of conservative ideals. Family, respect, honesty, and determination were important to Chuck Connors, and he became the face of those values by accident. In real life, Connors even asked his athlete friends such as Don Drysdale, Duke Snider, and other sports stars to be in episodes. This made The Rifleman a unique mix of Hollywood and sports, as well as a show about traditional manhood. Not only did this success open a lot of doors in Hollywood, it also changed the course of Connors' job. But Lucas McCain's part turned into a cage, too, like a silent cost. While the show was over, Connors had a hard time getting out from under the character's shade. It was hard for him to get parts with enough depth, and he was often stuck in roles like cowboy, father, and hero. But Connors always tried to go further than he thought he could. In the 1965-1966 TV show Branded, he played Jason McCord, a military officer who was wrongfully fired for being a coward during war, when the truth was the exact opposite. This was one of his best performances. There was more to this show than just action. There was a subtle criticism of society and how people are judged too quickly in one moment, and how an image can seem permanently ruined. At the start of every show, Jason was stripped of his military uniform and thrown out, which was a very sad scene that cut to the bone. It wasn't like Connors used to protect his son with a gun. He had done wrong and was traveling the West not to fight but to clear his name. Being in that job required quiet strength, anger, and endurance. Connors knew all too well about these traits from his time in sports, from his mistakes, and from being left behind. But Connors' most dramatic change happened in 1977. When he played a white slave owner in Roots, a groundbreaking movie that showed the horrors of slavery to an entire country for the first time. As Tom Moore, Connors showed up with a mean look on his face, a strong voice, and a level of cruelty that made him hateful. Being the face of oppression and injustice for a guy who was once loved by the whole country was a dangerous move. Still, that chance was what made the difference. People who saw the slave master didn't see Lucas McCain. There was a real actor there who was brave enough to shed his safe image and go into the depths of the mind. Connors was nominated for an Emmy for her part as the bad guy, not because she was famous, but because she had the guts to play a character that was both uncomfortable and necessary. Between the two roles, one as a man dishonored by a false charge and the other as a man who did real harm, Chuck Connors showed a lot of range, depth, and a strong desire to rise above his own shadow. Chuck Connors went from being a failed athlete to a forgotten supporting actor to the face of an age of American TV. No one planned his path. He walked that path with the resolution of Lucas McCain, who told his son, "You don't need anyone to tell you're a good man as long as you know who you are." It wasn't gold statues or box office numbers that showed how successful he was. It was the hearts of watchers who would never forget the picture of a father in the western dusk. After a shootout, he was holding his son. And sometimes that's a better legacy than any star on the Walk of Fame. That kind of legacy might be even more important in the cold and realistic world of movies today. For all that Lucas McCain was the picture of the perfect dad, Chuck Connors was a guy who always had trouble with the word family. 3 times he got married, but each time they split up. But the number isn't what bothers people. That's what happened in all of those situations that seemed perfect. He was married to Elizabeth Riddell, a Canadian woman he met in WII. They had 4 kids together, so the marriage seemed stable. But even in that family, there were signs of trouble. Most of Chuck Connors' time was spent on set, leaving Elizabeth to take care of the kids and deal with her husband's mood swings. They didn't say anything in public. After many years, though, one of his kids told the press that he was a dad on TV but not at home. That short sentence told the hard truth. Even though Chuck Connors loved his job and his family, he wasn't strong or stable enough to hold on to both. In 1961, they split up. After the split, he dated a lot of women, some of whom were his ex-co-star. The relationship he got the most attention for was with Indian-American actress Kamala Devi, who played his co-star in Geronimo. They got married in 1963 because of how well they got along on screen. But things got tense in the relationship very quickly. While Connors was said to be controlling, traditional, and jealous, Kamala was said to be modern, independent, and vocal. People who knew him well said he would get angry if Kamala wore too much makeup or a flashy outfit in public. There was a lot of tension when word spread that Connors was seeing a young actress on set. She quickly broke up with him and never talked about the marriage again in an interview. People who knew him well said that his third marriage was short and quiet because both of them were too hurt to really open up. The truth is that Connors didn't seem interested in getting married after he turned 50. He decided to live alone in a big house in Los Angeles and only saw his kids sometimes. But those meetings were not often friendly. Even worse, people who worked behind the scenes said that Connors' kids often criticized him for being cold and distant. In a conversation held in private in 1988, his oldest son wouldn't talk about his dad. Rumors about these things were never proven or disproved, and they made people wonder if Chuck Connors was really like the father they loved in the movies. That being said, his life wasn't all trouble. Leonid Brezhnev was the general secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. Chuck Connors had an odd and almost unbelievable friendship with him at one point. During a trip to the U.S. in 1973, Brezhnev made it clear that he was a huge fan of the Riflemen and would love to meet Chuck Connors more than any other American leader. The meeting went like a scene from a movie about good manners. Connors gave Brezhnev a personalized Winchester gun that looked just like the one on the show and had a message from Lucas McCain to a friend engraved on it. The gift caused a media storm right away. Some people in Hollywood quietly put Connors on a blacklist because they thought he was hanging out with communists. He was never officially put on a blacklist, but he was slowly pushed out of casting calls, especially for parts that were patriotic or heroic. In the end, what seemed like an innocent act turned into a quiet turning point that ended the last few years of his career that were at their peak. Not being able to call him dad, broken relationships, and kids who don't want to call him dad all point to one cold truth. On TV, Chuck Connors may have been the perfect man, but in real life, he was just a man, with all the flaws, mistakes, and wounds that hadn't healed. On TV, he used to be the perfect American dad, tall, good, and raising a child by himself in the dangerous Wild West. Chuck Connors, also known as the Rifleman, protected the childhood memories of millions of people with his famous Winchester gun. But this is what no one thought would happen. The hero had a secret that he had never told anyone. No one would have thought that the man who was once called by Soviet leaders and given a rifle would later be put on a Hollywood blacklist. On screen, no one would believe that he was the man who was always there for his kid when he needed him. But in real life, it was his own blood children who often felt angry, chose to stay away, and eventually told him the truth about how they felt about him. What's even more shocking is that Chuck Connors broke his promise to stay silent right before he died and told the truth, which could destroy the picture of America's father he had spent decades building. What did he say before he finally shut his eyes? In what way could someone so loved be turned away by a whole industry? What was it about an icon's life that made it full of secrets that no one dared to talk about until he was gone? Thought you knew Chuck Connors after seeing The Rifleman? This video might make you think again. We don't see Chuck Connors through the lens of a director for the first time. Instead, we see him through their work, unfinished, painful, and can't be fixed.